If you're a special educator listening to this and you're not sure how you're going to make it through the day, the hour, the next few minutes, this is for you. It's Friday, you're losing it, here's what to do. Hey, special educators, this is Jennifer from Positively Learning. I'm so glad that you tuned in. Very different episode style, and I might delete this later, but let's dig in. If you've ever had one of those days where you are feeling overstimulated, overwhelmed, and you're thinking, I cannot take one more sound, one more question, one more thing touching me, this episode is for you. Let me start with a little context about me. I feel it's important to share this because we're all so different and we're coming at this from different perspectives. I've always had a bit of a grin and bear it personality, not necessarily super in touch with my feelings in the moment, more like, okay, how am I going to get through the next hour without melting down? And I know processing emotions matters and reflection matters. But sometimes you don't need this huge breakthrough. You just need a lifeline. So today I'm going to share 3 things that I actually did on those days when I truly couldn't take it anymore. Some of them might even sound humorous now, although at the time, trust me, they were not, but they are real and they did work. Here's tip number 1. The days I would go silent, also known as observation days. Now, let me be very clear. I didn't stop talking. I didn't ignore anybody or ignore students, and I didn't refuse to teach. But what I did on these days, as a result of being completely overwhelmed and overstimulated, was that I gave only the amount of direction that was necessary and appropriate and nothing extra. So if a task for my students required directions broken into 3 steps and then repeated once and with visuals, then that's exactly what I gave. But then I just let it be. And I called it my observation day. I stayed calm. I stopped performing and I conserved my energy. And anyone is welcome to judge. It's just what I had to do to get through that day. And something really surprising happened on these observation days, the days I was super quiet. Many of my students matched my energy. When I was calm, they were a little bit calmer. When I wasn't rushing or over-explaining, they slowed down a little bit. And when I stopped filling every second with my words, they stepped up. I was still teaching, I was still supporting, but I wasn't functioning. And honestly, I would learn so much about what my students could already do. So if you're listening to this and it's 11 o'clock on a Friday and you're feeling like you are about to snap, this one alone can save you. Tip number 2. The second thing I leaned on hard was what I called parallel learning moments, also known as micro joy. Without the circus. I actually kept a list, literally on a piece of construction paper. Tiny things my students loved. And by the end of the year, I had a very long list and it would change from year to year. So these aren't the big rewards. They're not the parties, no cupcakes, no elaborate prep. I didn't transform my classroom. It was just tiny little things that made familiar work feel joyful and maybe even new. Things like doing the same task, but this time we added fun markers. Instead of whiteboards, we wrote directly on the table. We played music. We took learning to a different spot in the school or outside when the weather was nice. We switched up our flexible seating options. We did our work on colorful scrapbook paper. The learning stayed the same, but the delivery changed. I called it parallel learning because we were still working on the same goals. We were just doing it in a slightly different manner. And it gave my students little sparks of joy. And for me, it just gave me relief and it didn't require more energy. And on hard days, we know how much that matters. I would definitely start that list now. So when you do have one of those days, you have it ready for you. And tip number 3. This one may not be in a textbook, but it is what worked. On the hardest days, I let my students run the show. I put my students in charge as much as possible. One student would run the timer. One student would set up the activities. One student would point during instruction. And sometimes a student even led the activity and another student supported them. And guess what? The students who would thrive with this approach were often the trickiest ones. Why? Because I was showing them trust. I wasn't checking out. I was stepping back, and they rose to the occasion. Now, please don't tell anybody I suggested doing this, but I wouldn't have kept doing it if it didn't work, and it worked beautifully. So those are my 3 survival strategies for the days when it's only Tuesday and you're losing it. Number 1 was observation day, the day I just went quiet and I just collected data. I gave my students what they needed, nothing over the top, and I just took observation notes on how it went. Number 2 was parallel learning micro joys, taking that everyday learning and just putting in a little bit of novelty and joy without flipping the room upside down. And number 3 was letting students take the lead. That was a great way to collect more data on how they were doing. It made them feel good. We still got things done. It didn't get crazy. None of these things required more prep. None of these mean that you're failing. And all of them protect your nervous system. And they support student independence. So I would love to know, have you tried anything like this? Does any of this sound familiar? Or did one of these spark an idea that you might try this week? You are not alone. And sometimes getting through the day is the win. And if today is feeling heavy, it's okay to do what works. Thank you so much for listening. I will see you in the next episode of the Special Educators Resource Room. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'm dying to ask, what'd you think? Be sure to hit the follow or subscribe buttons so that you never miss an episode. You can find the show notes and links for everything mentioned in this episode at positivelylearningblog.com. See you next week for more special education solutions.